Tim here, and today I'm going to teach you about 9 rhythm patterns beginners mess up all the time. And we're going to start with the basics of how to count to catch everybody up. Here we have 4 quarter notes. 1, 2, 3, 4. We can fit 4 quarter notes in each of these boxes, also called a measure. And what tells us that is this number right here, 4, 4. It tells you that there are 4 beats in each measure. And it also tells you that the quarter note gets 1 beat, which makes perfect sense because here we have 4 quarter notes. Here we have 8 eighth notes, and these are going to be counted twice as fast as the quarter notes. But first, let's write in each of our 4 beats because we're still in 4/4 time signature. So we have each of our 4 beats here. 1, 2, 3, 4. And we have to account for the other half of the beat, and we use this term called and it looks like a plus sign. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Just a little tip before we move on, you always want to make sure that you're counting nice and evenly. So 1, 2, 3, 4 instead of 1, 2, 3, 4. Here we have 2 half notes, and if we're in 4/4, how many beats do you think a half note gets? Well, it gets 2, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. Played like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. And whenever you're counting these, you want to count as evenly as possible. Next up is the dotted half note followed by the quarter note. The dotted half note, if you can do some math here, this is worth 1 beat. And if we need 4 total beats, this must be worth 3 beats. This is going to come up later, so I want to tell you about it now. I want to tell you what the dot does to the note. So without the dot, it was just a half note, right? We just counted that. That was worth 2. But this is worth 3, so what gives? Well, the dot, listen closely, the dot adds half of the note's value back to itself. So if this is worth 2, the dot is worth half of that, so the dot is worth 1. 2 plus 1 equals 3. And this one's a whole note just played for 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now on to the first pattern that I find a lot of students mess up as beginners, and it's this dotted quarter eighth pattern. And let's take a look at the dotted quarter note and break it down. The dotted quarter note, remember what I just said. What did I just say? That the dot adds half of the note's value back to itself. So if this is worth 1, this is worth half of a 1, which is half. So 1 plus 1/2 is 1.5. So how in the world are we going to count 1.5 anyway? Well, to do this, I want to go back to one we talked about right towards the beginning, and it's this one with the eighth notes. Remember when we were doing quarter notes, those were quarter notes. They were worth 1 beat apiece, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. And this was twice as fast. This was 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Now why I'm bringing this up again is that each of these now represents half of a beat, right? Since beat 1's here, this is the first half of beat 1. An eighth note gets half of a beat, by the way, as you could probably tell. And then the other half is on the and. This is beat 2, and this is the second half of beat 2. This is the first half of beat 3, second half of beat 3, first half of beat 4, second half of beat 4. And there's a reason I'm bringing this up, because we have to figure out how long are we going to hold a note that's 1.5 beats. Well, we can figure this out just by looking at this, because these represent half of a beat each, and we need 1.5. So how many halves are in 1.5? Well, you have a half, then you have a whole, and then you have 1.5. So the answer is 3. So a dotted quarter note would take up 1 and 2 because it's worth 1.5 beats. And the next eighth note would actually be on and. And we'll get to the rhythm in a second, but just playing it here, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and is how we would count that if it began with a dotted quarter eighth. So going back to the rhythm, I've charted it out. This takes up 1 and 2. This is on and. 3 and 4 and. Now one thing I want to bring up so that you keep in mind is that when you are counting in 1 and 2 ands, for things like eighth notes, dotted quarter notes, there's going to be other notes in the future you'll need it for. But whenever you're doing that, you have to also make sure that you're still counting these quarter notes, not just as 3, 4, but 3 and 4 and, because that helps maintain consistency and helps you count more accurately. So this would actually be counted as 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. All right, we got another rhythm here, but I do want to tell you real quick that at the very end, once we get through all 9 rhythm patterns, we're actually going to do a practice exercise where we're going to look at a few real life examples of some of these rhythms. So look forward to that for some real life application. But here we have the dotted eighth, quarter, eighth rhythm, which does something kind of interesting to the rhythm. It kind of throws off all the beats where you might expect. You might expect notes to hit on 1, 2, 3, 4, or with eighth notes 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 but this is slightly different. This still always begins on beat 1, but this is only an eighth note. So therefore, it's only half of beat 1. So the other half of beat 1 is actually here. But you may be saying, Tim, this is a quarter note. It is not worth only half of a beat. So how can it be on the second half of beat 1? Well, it hits on the second half of beat 1. It's actually going to take up and 2, because remember, a quarter note has to take up a number plus the and. We did that breaking that down in the beginning, and watch that again if you need to. So this will be and 2. And guess what? This will be and 3 and 4. And that'll be and. So it kind of shifts over the beats because now we're hitting on quarters on the ands and pretty much everything on the ands except for that first one. So this is how it'll be counted. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Kind of has a syncopated type of feel to it, where instead of going 1, 2, 3, 4, it's like 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. And this is like almost a simplified version of syncopation. And we'll certainly get into that in a future lesson. Okay, we got to talk about triplets. So before we were talking about duplets, right? Splitting things up into 2 with the eighth notes. Now we got to talk about how to split things up into 3s, and it's fairly easy, but it does take some getting used to. So here I've written out the triplet. When you're counting triplets, it's just 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 3 triplet, 4 triplet. We still have our 4 quarter notes, but now they're just taken up by triplet. But in this measure, it's a little different. We only have the first note taken up by the triplet, but the other beats are just straight quarter notes. So how would you do that? Well, it'd be like this. 1 triplet, 2, 3, 4. Now, you may notice that we were playing notes that are pretty fast. 1 triplet, 2, and then it slows way down. 3, 4. And what a lot of students get wrong is they play it not accurately enough. And this is what I recommend you do. If you have triplets followed by quarter notes, that you still want to, what's called subdividing, dividing the notes into different parts. But this time you're going to divide them by triplets, but you're still just going to count 2, 3, 4. So you're going to do it like this. 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 3 triplet, 4 triplet. Notice how on the last 3, I only played quarter notes, but I still said, the number and then triplet after each one. Let's do it one more time just to show you. 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 3 triplet, 4 triplet. Now, naturally, there should be a question in your mind. And that is, Tim, what if I have a triplet followed by a duplet? Because you can't go 1 triplet, 2 and triplet, 3 triplet, 4. It just doesn't work, right? Because we have this duplet right after the triplet. We're dividing into different segments, right? 3 versus 2. So let me show you how to accomplish that. Okay, I'm going to do it one time without the metronome, and then we're going to do it with the metronome to prove a point. So here I'm going to count it. Are you ready? 1 triplet, 2 and 3 and 4 and. Notice how it was a 1 triplet, and then we got here, it was really kind of out of sync a little bit. And this is just something that I struggle with too, and I always have to come back to the metronome to kind of sort things out. Okay, I'm going to start it up. If you don't know, a metronome basically keeps the beat for us. So it's going to count out 4 beats. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now keep in mind that for each of this click, the first click you're going to do a triplet. Click, click, 3 and 4 and. And actually I want to do a simplified version of this first. We're just going to do 1 triplet and then 2, 3, 4. And we're going to do this in time with the metronome. We're going to give it a few tries. Hopefully I don't have any syncing issues here. If it seems offbeat, there's some sort of weird syncing problem. But let's go. 1, 2, I'm going to come in 3, 4, 1 triplet, 2, 3, 4, 1 triplet, 2, 3, 4, 1 triplet, 2, 3, 4. So I did it over and over again until I got the feeling of how to count this simplified version of it. But now we have to go into this where it's not 1 triplet, 2, 3, 4. It's 1 triplet, 2 and 3 and 4 and, with the 2 on 3 and 4 and, or the 2 quarter notes. But here we go. Are you ready? I'm going to do this a few times. And this is how I get my triplets into duplets correct. So I'm going to let it count off a beat of 4, and then I'm going to try to do it. And I nailed it already. And I was really thinking about the beat 1, 1 triplet, 2 and, right? That's really it's correct. 1 triplet, 2 and. It slows down here, but if you do it in time with the metronome, you can make sure that you're still hitting everything on the appropriate beats, and you're not going to get that weird like kind of thing where I first counted it out and it was fast here and slow here. It was exactly in time. So let's do it one more time to see if I can do it. And then once you can get this one, and actually maybe even before this, what I want you to do is I want you to alternate between triplets and duplets, triplets and duplets. So it'll be like this. Let me do a thing of 4, and then I'll come in. 3, 4. And do that over and over again, and that'll get you the 1 triplet, 2 and that'll just become more and more second nature to you. And you won't be like me where you have to break out the metronome. To be fair, I don't play this pattern all the time, and sometimes when you don't see something in music all the time, it can kind of fall out of practice, which is why we practice things more than once. Okay, we're taking a look right here, and we have something we haven't talked about before. I want to talk a bit about rests before this lesson is over. And then remember, we're going to play a few real-world examples here of some of these rhythms. And then I have something at the end I want to tell you all about. But first, this is a rest. This is a quarter rest. It looks like a lightning bolt, something maybe on the forehead of Harry Potter. I don't know. But anyway, a quarter rest, like a quarter note, gets 1 beat. However, as the name implies, you rest for that beat. And you don't play, but you will come in on these beats. So it's going to be counted like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's all there is to it. Now here's something students mess up all the time, and you may be thinking, Tim, how is that possible? It's so easy. Well, this is where it comes in. I'm going to play this, and I'm going to play it wrong, and you're going to have to think, what am I playing wrong? So here we go. It won't be as easy as you think. At least if you're a beginner. So here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. You may be like, well, you played it right. You played on 2 and 4. And you rested here. And, do we rest here? So this is the point I want to make. Whenever you have a rest, it means silence is golden, right? It just means you're resting. Music and the way we talk, right? I don't just talk with run-on sentences without any sort of punctuation where things just run into each other and it's really hard to follow what I'm saying. I speak in sentences with pauses and silence in between. And the silence is what makes everything make more sense. Get it? So here's my point. Beat 1 is silent. Beat 2 plays. But beat 3 has to be silent. So I have to be careful of beat 2 not to hold it over. So this is actually going to be counted 1, 2, 3, 4. Notice how I came off the key a little bit over-exaggerated there. You generally want to have your hands over the keys all the time and play it more like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. I still came up, but I'm not lifting my hand up off the keys. All right, one of the final patterns, and then remember, we're going to do some sheet music work here. So this is an 8th rest. And an 8th rest, like an 8th note, gets half of a beat. And so it's going to look something like this. So I'm just going to count this as 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 ands because we're dealing with the eighth notes here. And I'm just not going to come in on beat 1. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and again 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. A lot of students mess this up for some reason, but just take a look and practice it so you got it. Here's another one, zooming out for a second, that students get wrong all the time. And you're like, Tim, these are just straight half notes. How is that possible? But we have a tie in the middle here, so let me explain. All right, I've drawn out the rhythms. I like to use underlines to show me how long I'm holding the note for. And so we have beats 1, 2, and then 3, 4, and then 1, 2, 3, 4. But these are tied, and as the name suggests, we are tying the note values together like this. So now it's actually going to be counted 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And ties are really useful for carrying beats over within a measure or even across multiple measures, which is probably where you're going to see it the most, at least in the beginning. So watch out for your ties. All it does is tie two note values together. Okay, this is one more rhythm pattern, and then we're going to take a look at more sheet music. But here's actually a sheet music example in itself because it just makes it so much easier to explain. Let's take a look here on measure 1 here. Notice how there's a C in the beginning here for our time signature. That is called common time, that C in the beginning, for the treble clef and bass clef. And that's just 4/4. 4/4 is the most common time signature. So if we're in 4/4, what's wrong with measure 1 here? Well, we're supposed to have 4 beats, but there's only 1 beat in that measure. So what gives? Well, this is called a pickup measure. And to figure this out, I want you to take a look at the last measure of this example here. How many beats do we have? Well, we only have 3. That's weird, but we're supposed to have 4 because it's common time. So this is a pickup measure. What this means is that this piece originally is supposed to kind of loop around. And you'll usually see this like right before a repeat or some sort of piece that has a longer format where you're kind of going back to sections. And believe it or not, well, you should believe it. It's not that hard to believe, I guess. These are the first 3 beats, 1, 2, 3. And this measure up here at the top, that's, just 1 beat. That's actually the missing beat on this measure. So it goes 1, 2, 3 at the bottom, and then circles up towards the top with beat 4 at the top. So when I'm counting this, coming in to play the piece, I'm not going to count 1, 2, 3, right? It's going to mess everything up. This note, the pickup note at the top, is actually going to hit on beats 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. So it comes in on 4. So when you're counting these, be on the lookout for measures that are incomplete. And then just remember, usually that incomplete measure is, it's completed somewhere else. And usually it's because you're doing some kind of repeat. So I'm going to play the end here and into the beginning. And I'm going to count it out loud. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. Just like that. Okay, we have some real sheet music examples, just as I promised. But first, in every lesson, I usually like to say, thank you so much to those that have supported the channel over the years, from the regular viewers to the mods, to people that enroll in my courses over on my website, pianolessonsontheweb.com, to the channel members. I just want to say thank you guys so much. Without your support, we wouldn't have been able to reach as many students as we've had. So thanks again. On with the lesson. So one thing I always like to do with students is start associating common pieces or songs with some of these rhythm patterns, because some of these lyrics in these songs match up perfectly with the rhythm. And the perfect example is this one here. Now we have a dotted quarter. We're looking right in the beginning. We got a dotted quarter followed by an eighth and then a quarter. Keep in mind we only have 3 beats in each measure. So it's going to be counted as 1, 2, and 3 like that. And then 1, 2, 3. And it lines up perfectly with Silent Night. Excuse my poor singing. Holy Night, right? 1, 2, and 3, Silent Night. So the beginning of Silent Night will set you up perfectly for understanding these dotted quarters. And I recommend you can find any version of this. This was on ChristmasMusicSongs.com, but there's a ton of different things out there. And it's always a good piece to master your dotted quarter eighth rhythm, especially with Christmas coming up sort of around the corner. Okay, we've got Amazing Grace here, and you can find this song in this Alfred all-in-one adult piano course. And let's play some of it because we have some triplets. So here in beat, I guess it's measure 2, right? So measure 1's here. That's an incomplete measure. So there's a pickup measure here, which actually is a good reason to bring this up. I wasn't even aware of this. But keep in mind, we have 3 beats in a measure. This is only, 1 beat total, 1 and. So what gives? Well, probably we have a repeat later on in the piece. I won't even look. But just regardless, you want to count this as 3 and. So you can come in here on beat 1, right? So again, how do we count a triplet? Triplet, right? So this measure here, I'll play the pickup in a second, but the first measure, full measure here is going to be 1, 2, 3 triplet, just like that, nice and slow. 1, 2, 3 triplet, and you could even divide in your head 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 3 triplet, and see how that allowed me to come in really accurately there. Now, what I want to tell you is I messed up because I did this. Now the timing was correct, but I messed up the quarter rest right here. And that's why I said that this is something students will mess up, is because they tend to hold things over even when they're supposed to be rested like this. So it's going to be played 1, 2, 3 triplet. And again, I pulled my hand off here just to show you, but it'll really be played like this: 1, 2, 3 triplet, and just make sure you're coming off of there when you're hitting that last beat. So let me play the whole line here. It may be a little confusing at first, but keep working on this stuff. I'm just bringing up this sheet music to make some points here about the pickup measure, about the rests, the triplets, all of it. So here we go: 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2. 3 triplet, 1, 2, 3 triplet, 1, 2, 3 triplet, and just like that. Okay, so this is a little excerpt from He's Got the Whole World in His Hands. And again, we're in 4/4, as you can see at the top, first measure. And we have an incomplete measure once again. So what I would do is know that these are the last few beats of the measure, and I'd work your way backwards. I know beat 4 is right there, and I know the second half of beat 4 is that second eighth note right there. So right before beat 4 has to be the second half of beat 3 because we're working our way backwards. So when I come in on this piece, I'm going to be counting 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and just like that, so I can come in on beat 1, first complete measure right there. And I really wanted to bring this piece up because if you look at measure 3, we have an eighth quarter rhythm. Remember I said that kind of shifts the beats over. It wouldn't be like 1, 2, 3, 4, and it would be more like 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and just like that. And keep in mind, we have some rest going on as well. So this piece is a really good example of combining a lot of the things we talked about, mainly ties, rests. Yeah, there are rests in here. We didn't talk about those, but in pickup measures is what I wanted to say. And if you want to learn this piece, this is also in the Alfred Adult. This is where I got a lot of these pieces today, and they're really good at kind of introducing you to these rhythm patterns and getting you to, put some of what we talked about today into real practice. So let me just play through these 2 lines, and then I have a final tip to finish out the lesson. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 2. And just like that, you don't need to play it fast. Make sure when you're first playing these, you play them nice and slow. Okay, here's the final tip to rule them all, and it's that this video is part of a larger series, a new series I've made for beginners to catch beginner piano players and musicians up on the basic skills they need to succeed at their instrument. So what I want you to do after this lesson is watch the rest of this series right here. Just binge it all today. Why not? And if you've seen a lot of these videos, I want you to check out some more rhythm videos right here. It's been your piano teacher, Tim, here, and I'll see you next time.